Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, the personal development podcast for folks who want more fulfillment, connection, purpose, and joy in life. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, a no-nonsense coach, a seasoned entrepreneur, photographer, rescue dog mum, and happy life enthusiast. Each week on the podcast, I share tools, tips, and strategies, amazing guest interviews, and uplifting conversations that will help you improve all areas of your life. Let's dive in. Hi folks, very warm welcome to season 4, episode 13 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast with me, Emma O'Brien. Today I'm going to be talking to you about healing your inner child and how reparenting yourself can help you really reconnect to your brilliant, innate and authentic self. Inner child healing is all about reconnecting to and healing the younger version of you. However well you were parented, there will be some aspect of the younger you that didn't get exactly what he or she needed. And there will be things that happened in your childhood that left you with limiting beliefs, that left you with a sense of perhaps not being quite good enough, or a sense that there's some part of you missing or that needs to be worked on, or something about you that isn't quite perfect exactly as you are. And a lot of the coaching work I do is helping women really reclaim their sovereignty, step into their power, speak their truth, understand themselves better, build self-awareness, and ultimately take back control of their lives. And one of the most important parts of that work is learning to reconnect with and heal the younger version of you. And your inner child represents your early emotional experiences. It is the playful, joyful, curious, and very vulnerable parts of you. One of the things, the modalities that works really well with inner child work is internal family systems, also known as parts work. It's Richard Schwartz's work. So that's a really interesting avenue to start to explore. He's got a couple of books, No Bad Parts, and You Are the One You've Been Looking For. So if this starts to pique your interest, those are Richard Schwartz's work is where I would point you to. Because often we find that we're running beliefs that keep us stuck and hold us back, which were set in motion when we were teeny tiny, 4, 5, 6. And we have certain behavior patterns and certain aspects of life that are really being run by a very, very young part of us who really has no business being in charge of things anymore. That's where the work of reparenting and the inner child healing work comes back to, so you can almost pick that bit of yourself up and tell it that actually you don't need to be in charge anymore, because the older, if in my case, the 44-year-old version has got this. We don't need the 6-year-old version of Emma running the show and being afraid or driving behavior patterns anymore. So internal family systems is a really, really great modality for doing a deeper dive into inner child work, one of the aspects of it. So connecting with your inner child isn't about being childish. It isn't about being irresponsible or being silly, unless that's an aspect of fun that you're going to have. It's about reconnecting with the childlike nature within you. There's often life just smushes it out of us. It's that sense of curiosity. It's a sense of, what do you do for fun just because? It's the bit of you that finds joy in listening to the birds singing in the garden. And the more you can reconnect to that, the more you're actually able to bring yourself back to being present in the present moment, which is really all we ever have. But often we're very stuck in the past, ruminating over things, or we're very sort of jammed and projecting ourselves into the future, and we're anxious. Very rarely are we here and able to experience and enjoy and just be with what's happening in the moment, like children very much can. When our inner child wounds are touched upon, and this is where you'll start to find the clues of where the healing work is for you to do, we tend to find that our self-doubt is triggered, our people-pleasing is triggered, our fear of rejection starts to surface, or we're incredibly emotionally reactive And you might have somebody might say something to you, somebody might do something, and you'll have a real snap reaction to it. And afterwards, you'll just think, I actually don't know why I did that. I don't know why that was so triggering for me. And it's old stuff that's being stepped on. And the more we can make friends with our various parts, our child parts, our wounds, our shadow selves, the more we understand ourselves better, and the better able we are to show up in the world, the more self-aware you are, and the better you know yourself, the better you can be, because you can either just voice your needs in a scenario that you know is perhaps going to be a bit difficult for you. You can just speak up ahead of time and give the other people a heads up if there's other people involved. You can manage your own reactivity by just learning to regulate it better. If triggers are teachers. So when we are triggered by something, it's an opportunity for us to do a bit of internal work. So if you can start to observe your own behavior and be aware of your own behavior rather than be at the mercy of your own behavior, you're far more in control of what's happening in your life, because you're in control of how you respond to things. And when we move from reactivity into responding, the game completely and utterly changes, because we're not at the mercy of these kind of big emotional outbursts that when our inner child is running the show, often we can have, and then think, oh God, I really shouldn't have said that, or I really don't know why I did that. When we're reactive, we tend to just make every situation far worse for ourselves. So the more you can get a handle on your internal state, the easier life will become for you. So here are a few common signs that your inner child might need your attention. So you're overreactive to small triggers, or you interpret other people's actions as criticism. And in the moment, you might be like, God, why did you just make me feel like that? And the other person's like, well, I just moved a pencil. I don't know how you're reading that into my very small action I took there. If you find yourself being really overly reactive to teeny tiny things, there's something deeper at play there for you. If in your adult relationships you feel regularly quite abandoned, you feel very unseen, you maybe have a conscious awareness that there are dysfunctional relationship patterns that keep repeating, there is some inner child work to do. If you find yourself, metaphorically, obviously not actually, married to one of your parents, your inner child is at play here, trying to replay patterns to get a different outcome than they did in the past. If you find it difficult to set boundaries, you find it difficult to say no because you don't want to disappoint people, there may be some stuff that's at play from childhood. If you feel chronic guilt, shame, or the need to be perfect, was that something that was modeled to you, or was that something you embodied as a small human? Whether or not it was intentional, whether or not that was the overt message, if you took that on board as a message, I have to be perfect to be loved, for instance, that is going to make life very miserable for you. There's time to do some work there. If you find yourself with a deep longing to be cared for or rescued by somebody else, and you don't believe you will be whole until that happens, because you are seeking love and validation externally all the time, your little human needs your attention. And this is really interesting work to get into. So here is what inner child healing involves. Starts off with awareness of noticing when you're responding in a way that is perhaps not appropriate for a situation that you're in. If you feel like, God, I feel like I had a complete tantrum about that, or you have a big emotional reaction to something, you don't really know where it came from, you don't really know how to process it. But self-awareness is the first key to changing anything. When you can start to notice your own behavior patterns, you have the power to change them. Change with behavior patterns doesn't happen overnight, of course, but as soon as you become aware of something, you're 50% there. A lot of people are walking through very unconscious of their own behavior patterns, and when you bring them into awareness, you get your power back. You can start to connect to that younger part of yourself. You can do journaling to do this, some visualization, meditation. One of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about just now is shamanic journey work is really, really powerful for connecting to parts of your younger self. So if you're curious about that, that is something that I do with clients. It's something I offer. It allows us to go into the imaginal realm and really just reconnect with that younger bit. Often a lot of healing happens in the energetic plane. Obviously we can't go back and physically ever relate to our younger self, but metaphorically and energetically we can do. There's huge power in energetic healing work, especially with shamanic journey work. Reparenting, which essentially means giving yourself the love and validation and protection you didn't receive as a child. So if you find yourself in situations where you want to speak up, but you can't or won't or don't feel comfortable to, and you end up allowing other people to run the show for you, and you end up really quite stuck, that is a moment to start to have a look at what would it take for me to stand up for myself now, when either I didn't stand up for myself when I was younger, or a parent who should have stood up for me didn't. You can start to play the role of and give yourself what you didn't have as a child. That is when change starts to happen in your life, is when you take responsibility for your own healing. There's a wonderful quote that I saw on social media lately that childhood trauma, whether it's big T trauma or little t trauma, was not your fault or your responsibility, but the healing from that is your responsibility. It isn't up to anybody else to heal that. You are the only person who can do it. The important part with a lot of this work is integrating it. So awareness is great, having an awareness of your behavior patterns, knowing that if I change this behavior pattern, I'm going to get a different outcome. Knowing is brilliant. Awareness is great. But the real change and the real needle moving stuff happens is when we integrate it, when we actually embody what we have learned and we do something different in a situation that previously you might not have set a boundary, for instance, with somebody. And you know you need to set a boundary in order to change it. Integration happens when, even though you're scared, even though you feel activated, you do something different. You set that boundary and we actually embody the change. This is where I think a lot of healing work doesn't work for people, because awareness is only part of it. The real change happens when you step up for yourself and you do something different. And that requires a lot of courage, and it requires almost white knuckling through some things, but you have to integrate in order to see a different result. We have to take the healing full circle. Your nervous system plays a big role in inner child work. I talked about the witch wound in last week's episode, and I talked about how it plays out in your nervous system. That is when you have your fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response activated by something that happens to you. And often our unhealed childhood experiences wire our nervous systems to behave in a certain way when a certain thing happens. So if you hear somebody talk to you in a particular tone that reminds you of a parent or a caregiver or a teacher or somebody from when you were small, and even though it's not appropriate in the situation and there's nothing for you to be frightened of as an adult, you might find your nervous system is activated in the same way it was when you were 5 when somebody raises their voice. So when you can learn to listen to your nervous system and go, okay, this is really interesting that I've been activated by this, and then you can learn to regulate it back out of that state, you are back in charge of your emotional responses. I teach heart math, which is an amazing set of nervous system regulation tools. And it's not about, I'm just going to reiterate, and I do this every time when I talk about nervous system work, it isn't about silencing feelings. It's not about squashing them. It is about giving you the tools to not be ruled by them. When you can, notice that you have been activated into a flight response, for example, and you start to feel that stress response rise, and you start to think, I really would like to get out of here now. When you have the tools to notice that, you can go, oh, it's interesting, my nervous system has been activated. I can employ some tools to be able to calm that stress response down. So I'm able to operate from my logical brain rather than my alarmed brain. And I can see this for what it is rather than what my frightened, activated nervous system would have me think that I'm really being threatened when perhaps you are not. So when you can create safety in your body, you can start to go there with the inner child work. You can start to dig a bit deeper into understanding your younger self and perhaps sitting with your younger self and soothing your younger self's fears and anxiety and anger and rage when you know you have the tools to be able to cope with those big feelings. Often we avoid big feelings because A, they're really uncomfortable, and B, often we can be worried that if I open Pandora's box with these big feelings from my childhood that I know I've got that I've repressed, what if they don't stop? What if I cannot come back from this? And having the tools to regulate your nervous system is so important to give you the control to be able to process things and know that it's safe for you to be able to do that. Something that's really very magical, quite literally, for inner child healing is shamanic work. So one of the things that I do in my shamanic practice is soul retrieval work. And the shamanic view on this is that when we are small and we have experiences whereby our authenticity is called into question, we are shamed for laughing too much, we're shamed for being too silly, or we're shamed for a behavior that we don't know any better, our soul, an element of our soul goes, oh, okay, that bit we've just been shamed for or laughed at or told to be quiet, we best just put that to the side somewhere. Just put that away. And the shamanic concept of this is soul fragmentation. So we effectively send a bit of ourselves away for safekeeping somewhere else, because this really authentic, joyful, fun part of me, it's not really welcome in the world that I live in. So it's dangerous for it to be out and about. So let's just shut it away so we can't be caused any trouble by it. The example I can think of is I must have been 5 or 6, and I was a very sensible, compliant child. I have morphed into a very not sensible, non-compliant adult, which I find quite amusing, really. And I was at my dad's work, and I was always very, very good. But I think maybe I had a twirl and a bit of a spin round and a bit of a dance. And I remember I kind of stumbled and sort of bumped into a chair. And one of my dad's colleagues was there and he looked at me and went, that was really silly, wasn't it? And I can remember the shame that I felt. God, I've just been dancing around and playing, and, that's really not welcome here. And that's pretty sad, actually, when you start to think about it. So if we bring that into the context of shamanic soul retrieval, you'd be looking to reclaim the really playful part of me that wants to dance around and be joyful and not give a shit what anybody else thinks if I bump a chair in the process. And to heal that shame of, really, that's a very poor behavior from an adult. But there we go. This is what we're all out in the world dealing with, is the poor behavior of the adults that came before us, so we can heal ourselves and be better adults. So soul retrieval, essentially, if I'm doing a soul retrieval for somebody, I will journey to the lower world, which is non-ordinary imaginal reality, and I will go back, I will journey on someone's behalf, and I will go back and I will reclaim the parts of them that they tossed aside and went, nope, too dangerous for you to be here, playful part. And I'll go and retrieve those and bring them back for somebody. It kind of sounds like a very strange conceptual thing to do. But it's amazing what I see and pick up when I do a shamanic journey for somebody. And it's amazing when it comes back and I'll say to somebody, well, this is what I saw. This is what I found. This is what I'm bringing back for you. And this is how we reconnect everything. And it's all, you can take this work as literally as you want to, or you can go, okay, it's all a metaphor for my life and my healing. Doesn't matter. If it helps somebody feel whole, it helps somebody live more authentically, that is all that matters. And soul retrieval really is about helping somebody to heal the parts of themselves that they've tossed to one side for safety's sake, to bring them back and help people live and be more authentically them. And that is the feedback that I get from soul retrieval work. And it's so powerful. And it means you can do healing work on childhood stuff without having to keep talking about some trauma that happened. Because I think talking about trauma over and over and over actually just keeps the trauma alive. It doesn't heal anything really. Shamanic work bypasses that. So it's all on the energetic realm and it is very, very powerful. So I find it very exciting. So you can have a soul retrieval done for inner child healing work, which is really cool. Something I do in my coaching sessions as well is shamanic journey work, which I will guide a client through if they're looking to reconnect with something or they're stuck with something really powerful. Other ways you can start immediately after listening to the podcast is you can start journaling around inner child stuff. So a great journal prompt to work with is, what did I most need as a child that I didn't get? And what can I do to give that to myself now? Because we are responsible for our healing and we have the power to be able to heal ourselves. Self-soothing practices are really important. If you're comfortable with dialoguing with your inner child, you can speak out loud to the younger version of yourself. You can close your eyes and meditate and imagine the younger version of yourself, and you can imagine a conversation with them. You can get in touch with the things that you loved to do as a child, which perhaps you don't do now that you'd like to do. So maybe it is doing more in your garden. Maybe as a child you loved playing in the garden and playing in the mud. I mean, as an adult, you can go out and plant plants. It's the same thing. And you can have an equal amount of fun doing it. And you can make your garden look lovely. Maybe it's just being outside. Maybe it's listening to birds. Maybe it's bird watching. Maybe it is getting dressed up in something colorful. Whatever it is, if you can start to give your adult self an element of the thing that you enjoyed as a child, you start to help with that reparenting and that inner child healing as well. And this is a journey, and it is important to be gentle with yourself. It will be reparenting, inner child work, healing work, self-development work, whatever you want to call it. It's a lifelong journey. It doesn't stop. But as you do more healing work, it becomes easier to recover from things that do trigger you. It becomes easier to identify, oh, I think I've got a bit of a limiting belief at play here, which isn't helping me. I can go back to the tools I've got to be able to do that. But it's about being compassionate with yourself. Often we have things that happened that we don't even realize shaped us. Things, beliefs we have where we shame ourselves for things. To come back to the perfectionist example that I used at the beginning of the podcast, if you were taught as a child that if you get straight A's, you get love and approval, but if you don't, love and approval is withheld, you're going to walk through life thinking the only way that anybody's actually going to like me is if I'm perfect. That's a really difficult standard to live up to. I know a couple of people who were very, very academic high achievers, and they would come home and they'd say to a parent, well, I got an A minus. And instead of, oh, bloody hell, good work on the A minus, which is exactly what I would say to my own child, they'd say, well, why the minus? Why didn't you get an A? If you grow up with that conditioning, you're going to grow up to be a perfectionist. You're going to grow up to have very high standards for yourself and possibly for other people as well, which then impacts your relationship. So all of these things, they play a role and there's a snowball effect almost. So when you can start to sit with the younger self, sit with the belief systems that you had created for you as a child and start to unpack them, you'll be able to go, oh, no wonder I find this so difficult. How could I lighten up and be gentler with myself? How could I accept myself as I am, A minus and all, rather than just pushing myself to be perfect all the time? Nobody's perfect, unfortunately. Sorry about that. I know a lot of us come close, but it's not possible. So inner child work really is the process of reconnecting to your most authentic part of you. It's about accepting yourself for who you are, being able to validate yourself for who you are rather than seeking external validation. And it's being able to be aware of who you are, what your behaviors mean, why you behave in a certain way, what triggers you, what you enjoy. It's self-understanding. The better you know yourself, the better life is, the better you're able to step out and be yourself in the world. And this is something all over this work. I love it. I love helping people with this. So if you've listened to this and you've thought, oh, this is quite interesting, you'd like to know more about shamanic soul retrievals, you're very welcome to book a free connection call with me. The link is in the show notes, or you can get in touch with me on Instagram. It's at Emma O'Brien Coach. Pop me a message. I'm going to pop a link to a blog post about shamanic soul retrieval in the show notes as well. So if you're curious, you'd like to know a little bit more, you can check that out as well. And I want you to remember that it is okay to be you. You are perfect exactly as you are. And the more you can tell yourself that, and the more you can actually embody, I'm okay. I'm okay as me. I don't need to shift and change. I don't need to be something else in order for people to love me. The more compassion you can hold and have for yourself, the easier it is to move forward with this healing work, and the easier the experience of life is when you have some compassion, because life is quite hard. You don't need to make it harder for yourself by allowing all of your limiting beliefs to play out and run the show. So I hope this has been an interesting and insightful episode for you. I've certainly enjoyed going down the rabbit hole I've been on with topics I'm sharing on the podcast at the moment. So as always, you can get in touch with me. You can send a text message via the show notes. You can get in touch with me on Instagram, and I look forward to connecting with you. And I will see you again same time next week for another podcast episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please leave me a 5-star rating and a review, and make sure you share this episode with a friend who you know will also enjoy it. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. Please drop me a DM and say hi at Emma O'Brien Coach. And for more information about coaching with me, please head to my website, which is emmaobrien.coach.com.